This week's Parsha is Parshas Tzav. Parshas Tzav starts with a communication to Aaron and his sons. Aaron Banav. This is different from previous Parshas. The past two Parshas were also discussing the laws of the sacrifices, as does this Parsha, or part of this Parsha. But previously, whenever the laws of the sacrifices were communicated, they were communicated to the sons of Aaron. Aaron, of course, was the first Kohen, the father of all Kohanim, who were the ones who performed all of the services in the temple. So until now, the commandments regarding the sacrifices were directed to the sons of Aaron. And here, for the first time, the verse states that the communication was to Aaron and his sons. Why all of a sudden the difference? Why now does Hashem direct his communication to Aaron himself as opposed to previously to the sons of Aaron? So the Medrash explains that Aaron had fallen from favor because Aaron had a significant involvement in the sin of the golden calf. That at Mount Sinai, the Jewish people served the golden calf, and Aaron had some part in the construction of that golden calf. Of course, Aaron's intentions were pristine, but nonetheless, since he was involved in what was ultimately a sin, he was to be punished. One of the ways Hashem punished him was by not communicating the laws pertaining to the altar, to the sacrifices, to Aaron. Instead, he directed the communications to the sons of Aaron. But now, it had changed. What had changed? The Medrash explains that Moshe argued to Hashem that it doesn't make sense that Aaron's sons should be honored with the communication from God while Aaron himself is not. Why? Moshe compared it to a well, that it doesn't make sense that the waters of a well should be dear, treasured, while the well itself is not. Meaning that since Aaron is the one who brought up these children, who begat these children, who taught them everything they know, it does not make sense that the sons should be honored with the communications from Hashem and not Aaron himself. This lesson that everything that we are because of our forebears, because of our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and so on, is an important concept. And it is also the explanation why, specifically over here, the communication was to Aaron as opposed to his sons. The specific commandment in the beginning of this week's Parsha, which was started with the communication to Aaron specifically, is the laws of the Trumas Hadeshin, of the taking out of the ashes. The Olah sacrifice was burnt the entire day and the entire night. In the morning, there was a pile of ashes on the altar. There was a specific service done in holiness on the altar, which was the taking out of the ashes. That was the Trumas Hadeshin. And that is the communication that was communicated to Aaron himself. This idea of continuation is the idea of the Trumas Hadeshin, of the ashes. The entire day and the entire night, the Olah burns, the Olah sacrifice burns, and the next day, and in continuation of the service, recognition of the previous day, we put away those ashes with reverence, with awe, with holiness, because just because a new day has started does not mean that the previous day has been forgotten. And that's why this specific parsha, this specific subject, was the one that was communicated directly to Aaron as opposed to the previous laws which were communicated to the sons of Aaron. One question is, there is a specific commandment in this week's parsha, the beginning of the parsha, that the fire on the Mizbeach, on the altar, which burned the sacrifices, should be brought by humans. That we ourselves should light the fire on the altar. What's curious about this is that there was a miracle every day in the temple, in the tabernacle, on top of the altar, a fire would come down from heaven, a miraculous fire, and burn all of the sacrifices. Now, if that's the case, what purpose could there be in the commandment for us to also light a fire, if a fire anyway existed on top of the altar? Have a good Shabbos.